everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is Plant a Good Seed, live podcast video show. My name is Tish Oakley, and I'm with Earth Monkey Energies. We're pleased to bring you this show, and today our guest is the enigmatic Margery Ellis, who will be with us here in just a few seconds. She's with Headcount, and she'll be joining us. There she is. Hey,
Margery.
Hi. Finally got it going this morning. How we doing?
Excellent. How are you doing, Tish?
Good. It's good to see you live and actually like person to person. It's been a while.
Huh? It's been a long time. I guess like 3 years almost now.
It has. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Margery. I live in Colorado. I knew Tish when I lived in North Carolina, which is home for me. That's where I was born and raised, moved out here. Basically to follow a dream with the nonprofit that I volunteer for.
Woohoo!
Launched out here with Headcount, which is what we're going to talk about today. A nonprofit organization that I volunteer with. And I go out and register voters at concerts and music events, which is my other passion. It's going to see concerts and music events.
Yes.
So landing in Denver was the natural thing for me to do. And, but yeah, other than that, I mean, I love to hike, which was another great thing for me to move out here, getting out here and hiking and camping and just... There's so much to see in Colorado. It's fabulous.
They have people from the West say we have real mountains out here. You guys in North Carolina, you've got some hills and some foothills, right? But those foothills can kick my butt, though. I'll tell you what, some days.
It's true. I mean, a mountain's a mountain, but there's just something about the Rockies. It's just...
Yeah. Your pictures are just amazing. I can't imagine being there and feeling the energy, right?
On my trip that you saw those pictures from, I literally multiple times would just have to pull over on the side of the road and just feel it. Yes. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I just laughed at how amazing it was. It's just, yeah, the energy is amazing.
So let's come back to Headcount. So how in the world did you, I understand going to concerts. There's a lot of us, honestly, that love music and love going to concerts and doing that type thing. Mm-hmm. So where did this nonprofit Headcount kind of enter that scene for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, concerts and live music has just always been a part of my life, which has been great. And in 2015, something hit me and I was looking for a way to get involved in a deeper way. Something just wasn't settling right. I'm spending a lot of time and money at these events. Like, I could be doing something with this.
Yeah.
Right. So I just started kind of looking around and I remembered seeing Headcount at a lot of things. And it's always been really important to me to make your voice heard. Always.
Okay.
I've always, voted. And I think I was just at a show once and I was like, man, those people are really doing something excellent.
Yes.
So I reached out and looked into being a volunteer and saw where I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was no team to hit all the concerts down there. So I was like, well, we should have one.
Yes. Yes.
So I made it happen.
Yay! Yeah. Fabulous.
Yeah. So it's a really amazing organization, completely nonpartisan, nonprofit, 501c3, never collecting any data, anything like that. That's a really great thing. We're never pushing any party cause because, I mean, let's be real. Nobody wants to be told what to do. Right? It is so much more.
That's a whole other topic we can cover. They tell you they don't want. I think people tell you they say they don't want people to tell them what to do, and then they get in a herd and they follow the first sheep in front of them. So tell me that people don't want to be told what to do. They're going to follow. That's a whole other subject, though. But it is basic Americans, right? The American freedom, right? That's what we all want to hang our hat on. is that we should be free as Americans. Our basic constitution, our basic rights, the basic platform that our country was founded on,
right,
is freedom.
right.
And as you said, which is so beautiful, and I can't say it the way you did, but if we don't vote, then we're giving up our freedom. I mean, just to take it on right there.
Exactly. I mean, the freedom of speech. This is the just base of it all, you know. And, you know, as far as being able to vote, there have been progressions of who, as citizens, have been allowed to vote. And now here we are with this right, privilege, right? It's debatable which one of those that it is, because it's really both.
It is.
Yeah. And if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And so get out there and just make your voice heard. I mean, you cannot complain if you're not doing something.
That's exactly right. The armchair quarterbacks, armchair, you know, backseat drivers, that whole thing. Right. If you're not going to participate, if you're not going to take action, if you're not going to do, to me, it's a responsibility, actually.
Right. I mean, if you want to be upset or overjoyed and proud of what's happening at a particular level, feel like you've made an effort, you know, you've done something to help with that, you know, be it sending out text messages, making phone calls, helping put signs out, helping the elderly get to the polls in normal years, all those things, you know, like whatever it is, even just talking to your friends about voting, checking and asking them, have they registered? What's your plan? Asking grandma what's her plan, you know, all of those things, you know, especially now, you know, so, and again, you know, it starts at the local level, you know, voting for your city council, voting for your school board, and then obviously it goes up from there, you know.
100%. So you've told us a little bit about how you got into head count because you wanted to do something, which is great. Now, where did head count come from? Can you tell us a little bit about the background of head count?
It's literally the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, so Andy Bernstein is a huge Phish fan, and his buddy Mark Brownstein, also another fan. He's also the bass player for the Disco Biscuits. They were on tour and listening to all their friends complain, and were like, let's do something. And so in 2004, they used their resources, Mark as a musician, Andy as a long time, just somebody who's been around. He's an author, so he had written some things, and they utilized their resources. And from day one, we've had Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead on board, and just
lovely.
Of musicians who are like, how can we help? And so that was the origins in the jam band community in 2004. And since then, it has just evolved. Like I said, I got involved in 2015.
Okay.
And it was still very jam bandish, like a lot more. It branched out a lot. Michael Franti is a huge supporter, and he's such a positive embodiment and spirit. If you listen to Tish's show and you don't know Michael Franti, you should definitely check it out. Talk about planting a good seed. Like, honestly, good guy. Thank
you for that.
Yes. But, you know, all these musicians, really, it started branching out. And then the next step was in 2018. Sorry, time. What is time right now?
I know, right?
Getting my years all mixed up. But in 2018, the shootings in Florida happened in Parkland. Okay. And the students organized, if you recall, and the March wonderful. For Our Lives event happened. And the students wanted a nonpartisan voter registration group involved. And so they, one of them, their one of the kids, his dad is best friends with O'Teal Burbage, who is the bass player for Now Dead and Company.
Okay.
He was the bass player for all the Allman Brothers and some other really great bands. Well, anyways, he's a huge headcount supporter. So when that dad was talking to his buddy O'Teal, O'Teal said, "Hey, I know a group." And
Yay!
so then March for Our Lives happened, and we helped organize voter registration at over 36 events nationwide.
Wow.
Plus their digital campaign. And in a single day effort, this is super proud because I was co-organizer for this event. In a single day registration event, in-person event, we registered over 5,800 people in one day.
5,800 people one day.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's fantastic.
It was awesome. And it just took us to the next level. And then next thing you know, the musicians that it wasn't just the jam band, that it wasn't just that scene. Jay-Z and Beyonce invited us on their tour. Ariana Grande invited us on her tours, and I've got goosebumps right now. It's just
for real. I want to hear some stories though. That's where we're going next. So,
okay.
Because I think it's one of the things I think that's wonderful about the musicians that embrace headcount. They're not the musicians that which everyone is entitled to their opinion. But there's so many people I've heard say that, I don't really want to hear the opinions of entertainers, that kind of thing. So, which everybody has a right to their own thoughts and who they want to listen to, who they don't want to listen to. But where I'm going with this is the beautiful thing is these musicians that are with headcount are nonpartisan. They're not bad-mouthing anybody, any party, any belief, anything. They're embracing our American right to vote is what they're doing. And that whole system that we're based on, which I think is a much better use of their power, their reach, than it is to sit and badmouth any particular candidate, no matter what my opinion might be or who I agree or disagree with. But I definitely agree the American right to vote and getting it to people that may not be aware of the different rules of registration and things like that. Like you were talking about, one of the things you mentioned that I didn't even think about, is when people go away to school, and that they can register to vote where they're at school because that's where they're living. That's where the local laws affect them. So, I've never changed my voter registration except for when I move like my house. I never thought about it when I was in other kind of situations, but it's vital. So for you guys to be reaching all these people and making it easy. I mean, gosh, you can go to a concert and get signed up to vote. What in the world? What am I signing up for here? Oh, to vote. Oh, good. Okay. I'm in the right line.
People are like, am I at a concert? What's But then they're like, this is genius.
Yes.
Thank you. You just made it so convenient for me. And I love it. One of my favorite lines, is when, especially if they're standing in like the beer line or something, or the line, and I have a clipboard. I'm like, this is way more fun of a line than the line of the DMV. We make it easy for you. You can skip the DMV. And they're like, yes.
Right. And you can participate in your country versus that's just going to get you drunk. This is actually potentially going to help you participate in the future of your country. So it's a whole different kind of signing up for what. So, but yes, so you went on tour with the Dead first, didn't you?
Yeah. So I worked as a team leader in Wilmington for a while, and then I was traveling all over the country doing different festivals for headcount, and I was not happy in my job that I was in, and headcount caught wind of that through a friend of mine when I went to see some music, and next thing you know, I got a call from the head of headcount saying, "Hey, listen, I heard you weren't very happy," and at the time, I was very tuned in to trying to find a way to, because my spirit was very it was crushed at the time. And so I did. I got to go on 2 tours with Dead and Company, which, for anybody who doesn't know, is basically what's left of the Grateful Dead, plus John Mayer. And then I mentioned earlier O'Teal Burbage. He's the bass player. So it's very, and Jeff Chimenti. Don't want to leave him out because crucial player. We love Jeff. But yeah, so fall tour 2017 and then summer tour 2018. Myself and one other person in the fall and 4 other people in the summer. We got to go on tour going from venue to venue with the band, setting up an entire participation row. When we're on tour with Dead and Company and certain other bands, we set up a whole participation row where we bring in other local nonprofits to use our visibility.
Wow.
Yeah, to use our visibility to bring visibility to them, and it's really amazing. So, and then we have incentives to participate, like, you know, if you register to vote or sign up to receive our text reminders, and then if you visit this local nonprofit and participate with them and whatever they have, then you get a prize. So, actually, this button that I'm wearing here is
very nice.
Is one of the prizes from the summer tour, I think 2018, and we have just different little giveaways that we do. So it's an awesome way to engage with people and fans.
So let me ask you though let's start talking a little bit about demographics. Okay. Because part of you had expressed earlier that headcount is really why you want to register everybody to vote. You know that there's certain groups that have been unrepresented or have been lagging behind with their vote participation, so to speak, or even registering to vote, right?
Right.
So when you were with Dead and Company, I'm just curious, did you have a whole range of ages there at Dead and Company? Because, you know, I'm seeing people like me, people my age and beyond is what I'm thinking. I'm like,
but guess what? Your age, you move, and you need to take your voter registration. You also get married and divorced and need to change your name. And people need to change their party affiliation sometimes if their primary is being affected, you know. There's reasons that any age. I have registered folks. I think the oldest gentleman I have registered was back in Wilmington. I think he was an 89-year-old who had just relocated to his retirement community and was walking past the concert. It was great. Yeah. It was great. But, you know, Dead and Company, you know, you have a wide range of people. There's also, you know, we're a nonprofit, so we also do have a lot of fundraisers, and Dead and Company's fan base is fantastic in helping us raise money. You know, those folks grew up and have been very successful, very successful. So we partner with a guitar company, D'Angelico Guitars, and we have artists that makes art for them, and the band signs those guitars and we auction them off. So there's, you know, those fans are able to help us raise a lot of money, but also those fans have introduced their children to great music. And one of my other favorite things is that moment at a Dead show when the dad are standing there and I get to register their 18-year-old for the first time, and how proud mom and dad are that it's happening at a Dead show. Oh, the chills again. It's the best. It is. So you have a wide range of people interacting with us. And then again, when you step outside of just the Dead and Company world, you know,
we keep phasing
of benefit to us since March for Our Lives is, you know, really getting to spread out our message of democracy.
And responsibility in the democracy, right? That's really, we owe it to our country, not just to ourselves, not just to our friends and family, but we owe it to our country. Not only are we here to pay taxes, but we're here to vote.
We do. I mean, to be honest, Tish, we'd gotten complacent as a country. You know, the numbers are just horrible. After 2016, and this is just a small snippet of it, but in New York in 2016, only 4% of the eligible voters between the ages of 18 and 22 showed up. 4%. Yeah, but that's a 4-year age range. That's a whole, school group, all of those.
The representative interest was not represented is the bottom line. And so that's why certain people get voted in, is because those are the people that are voting.
Right. And there's a lot of people for a long time who are like, well, I don't even care. Like, I don't want to vote for anybody here. Well, fine. That's fine. But you didn't vote at city council level, at mayor level, at governor level, because those are the people who end up there. So
you're right.
Then you end up with candidates that you
don't like. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And some people say, I got real discouraged last election, and my son always gets embarrassed for me when I talk about some things, because I get frustrated. I sometimes am one of those Americans that I get frustrated with the system because I don't understand it. And so, in my past, there's been some years where I'm like, I'm just gonna, but as you get older, you realize that that's not acceptable at all. And you do need to educate yourself, right? About who, and so then my frustration becomes, where can I find nonpartisan information, objective information about these candidates? Because I feel like everything I read has rhetoric in it. Everything in it is trying to convince me either for or against something or else. I just want to see somebody's voting records. I want to see what they've done in their life. I want to see what they came from, that type thing. So do you have any advice for folks that, may be looking for some information on the candidates and trying to formulate their own opinions about things?
Tish, are you telling me you don't like being told what to do?
I have followed so many sheep's asses, though. That's my frustration. Don't tell me what to do, but I'm going to follow the person in front of me. What the hell? I hate being told what. I will not get in the box, and I do not color in the lines, my friend.
Absolutely not. Follow the path less traveled, for sure.
What path, man?
Exactly. It's funny, after we chatted the other day, just the next day in my mailbox, I meant to grab it. I live in Colorado again, and so we vote by mail here anyways. They've been voting by mail here longer than I've lived here, 4 or 5 elections, I don't know, a while.
Okay.
And so it's just a standard part of life here. And we receive a blue book. It's a light blue book. I think it's supposed to be similar to, you have a son school age. Remember the blue books with scan coupons and things like that?
Yeah.
It very much looks like that. And it is a completely nonpartisan breakdown of everything that's going to be on the ballots. Wow. We received it 1 per household, so it's not too much waste. And we will receive our ballots in the mail about a week from now, I think, to follow up on that. But it's very nice to have that nonpartisan everything right there in front of you. But that's Colorado. State to state, it can be difficult. Not every state provides resources like that. It's kind of like your news sources. Where do you get your news, period? I think it's smart, no matter what, to just be looking at multiple resources on these candidates, so that you're not just getting your information from one source. I mean, pull up a political map and look at the news outlets that are there. Pick a conservative one, pick a far left one, pick one in the middle, and read them all. Yeah. And, then because you know the perspective of all sides, and we should all be kind of trying to open our eyes to everyone's perspectives anyways, right?
Yes.
Just to kind of see where people are coming
Yes.
from, it helps. And then that in itself will help you formulate, because you're never going to agree 100% with anyone
That's
anyways. I mean,
right.
that's just a crazy phenomenon and concept to think that you're absolutely going to agree with someone on something 100%. It just doesn't happen. So, that's my recommendation, because it is very difficult, to find a nonpartisan news outlet,
It is.
something that's not, swayed one way or the other. So
It is. And bringing in all kinds of outside things when you ask for questions. That's one of my biggest frustrations is when I ask a question of someone and then they start bringing in all kinds of, it's like, can we just address this one issue right here? But you're 100% correct about the perfection. We're never going to have a perfect candidate. And so we really have to do the best we can with aligning our goals and our values with, at least in my mind, with the candidate's values, as well as who's behind the candidate. So the difference, right, of the national folks versus the local folks. So in the past, I've gotten real frustrated, again, with electoral college and things like that. And people come back to me and say, your local, like you mentioned before, your local government, you have a lot more say-so in your local government and with the candidates to a certain extent in your local government. So do you guys, when you guys are registering to vote, you guys basically are nonpartisan, you're signing people up to vote. Now, do you provide any information on candidates at head
no,
count? Okay.
no,
Not at all.
definitely not in our realm. No, I mean, we on the website absolutely provide links to your state's
Okay.
basic Secretary of State websites, because the Secretary of State website is, the government site. And so, we provide resources to get to the
Mm-hmm.
answer, but no, it's very much we are just here to register you to vote. And then we've also opened that up to don't forget to vote. Don't forget. I
Right,
actually
right.
participated in a text campaign last week and then another one last night. Last week, we were talking to our Dead and Company fans who had
Okay.
participated with us there. Last night, we were talking to Fish fans. That was so much fun. And,
Wonder who Margery
and we were
likes.
just asking, and we were asking them, are you registered? Are you ready to go? And then they
Right.
reply yes or no. If they say unsure, well, then we replied with a link to check their registration. And if they say yes, then we ask them, are you doing it in person, by mail, absentee? Because sometimes people just haven't thought through that process. Right. And right now, because things are weird and, between the pandemic and the
Yes.
mail and all these
Yes.
things, you need to think about it now, like
Yeah.
not November 3rd. This needs to be planned now more than
Yes.
ever. Planning ahead. We have to do it now.
100%. So you don't have any problems with mail-in ballots then? You say it's
No,
done in Colorado and it works fine.
Colorado, Oregon, Washington State. I mean, which when I lived in North Carolina, even 3 years into working head count, I still didn't know that there were states that did this until I was on tour with Dead and Company at a show in Oregon. And they were like, honey, we vote by mail here. And I was like, what is this genius?
I mean, there's a part of it. It is amazing, but there's a part of it that, when you think of, I don't know, to me, I feel like the system's still messed up. Like, I wouldn't have a problem showing my ID to vote, and I kind of wish that we did have to show some form of ID to vote because, I mean, again, that's my right. I have this right to vote. So, how do you know that that person's who they say they are if you
Your
don't take their
barcode.
ID?
Your
Right.
barcode. You're assigned a barcode. And once your barcode is scanned, then your barcode can never be scanned again in that election. So if you try, like, it's just going to cancel out. So you're assigned a barcode, just like any digital age anything. And when you vote, your barcode cannot vote again. So it's, and as far as the mail goes, Tish, The U.S. Postal Service has been handling Santa Claus and Christmas for a long time.
If they can handle Santa. I love that perspective.
Come on. Let's give them some credit. And our military has been voting from overseas by mail since the beginning of this. So
it wasn't necessarily the Postal Service that I was concerned about. I was concerned back in, I'm going to show my ignorance here, but when I think it was Gore and Bush or somebody, and we had to count votes 3 times with the doppelgangers and all kinds of things, I'm like, well, this is going to be fun, because I can just say recount, because people don't want to believe the numbers that are coming out, or whichever way they want to go with that. But it's going to be interesting change for us. And if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. So. And if it's going to,
I think it's a yet to be determined, very, very interesting next couple of months.
Yes, it will. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us.
I guess it's really just recording.
How are you doing? Sorry that things have been very busy over here in the IBMTV world and everything, but I know y'all are talking about some very important things, including that upcoming election and all of that stuff. So definitely glad that we've got folks that are out here mobilizing people. So definitely want to apologize for popping in late, but it's a very important time. So I definitely agree with y'all on all of that.
100%. Now, Margery, do you see Ankit's question here? Can you read that on the screen?
Can people
living in the country,
can they play any role in election?
If you're not in the country, like you're not in the United States, what are some ways that you can influence the election? Because he's actually got family members I know that live here in the United States, but he himself lives in India, and he's one of our main producers. So he's asking of ways that they can get involved in the election process should they want to get involved.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, I think that you do not have to be a citizen to make a phone call or a text message. We actually had some Canadians participating in our text banking the other night.
Nice.
You don't have to be a certain age or citizenship to participate in volunteer engagement. So there's absolutely tons of ways. Also, the power of social media is so big. So even just sharing advice, sharing things on Facebook or your Instagram or Twitter to your friends is going to be a great way to just at least share your passion for this process and care that your friends are involved. And then, that naturalization process, perhaps down the road you can vote. That's also really cool. Headcount has gotten involved with some naturalization ceremonies and registering people to vote on site, because interestingly enough, that's not an automatic process.
Wow. You'd think it would be, because that's what happens when you become an American. You can vote and pay taxes now. Isn't it exciting?
Well,
yeah. It's not an automatic process.
That's supposed to be what happens, but unfortunately, as we saw, I think it was just a few weeks ago or a month ago, sometimes some people use it as a political tool, because I remember that there was a naturalization ceremony that was actually held as part of one of the conventions, which I thought was just absolutely wrong on so many different levels. But I remember that was definitely got a lot of critique when certain people did that.
Well, because if it's at a convention, then it's basically saying we're registering you to vote for this party, so that way it'd be one thing if it was separate. Like, again, one of the things I love about headcount is nonpartisan. And anytime, like, you can tell from just hearing Margery today, she's not telling us who to vote for. She's saying, just get involved, vote, do your part. But I want to address some of the comments that came across. Exactly. So John Oakley said something about our political system being messed up, which I totally agree with him. And then Ankit said something about accountability to the leaders. And I want to say right now that I totally agree with both of them, but I believe that part of the problem is because American citizens haven't been involved enough. We haven't voted enough. We haven't, just like Margery, you said, these folks that are going for president most of the time, not always, but Congress folks, and they started at the lower levels. So if we let people in at the lower levels and don't express also, like, let's say they get in, but let's say something's not going right. I used to work with a guy named Scott Brookins, and he's a wonderful fellow. I love to call him Scotty B. And he's one of these guys that he would get real passionate. And if he didn't like something, whoop, he'd get all, whoop, I'm gonna go talk to somebody, he'd go do something, what can we do? And there was one time, in fact, that he was in the senator, like you said, Margery, social media it can be such a great way to get a message out. He's sitting there posting from the senator's office, right? Now, whether you agree with what he was doing, don't agree with what he was doing, he was getting involved. And I think that's part of what happens is we have gotten, and I don't want to throw too many terms out there, but we really, I feel like, have gotten into a situation where the for-profit companies are who's controlling our government, is where I think, without going in too far in depth with that. But I think that's part of what's wrong with our government is we have the wrong people. We don't have representatives. So many times when I look at who my potentials are to vote for, I'm like, none of these people represent me. Who represents me here? None of these guys. And I'll just go ahead and say it straight out. Some 60-year-old white man that with a silver spoon in his mouth that's been handed something his whole life doesn't represent me at all. You know what I mean? So now if he's open-minded, maybe there's a little bit of, breath that can come in there. But for the most part, that doesn't represent me at all. Where are the people that represent me? And Margery, you're right. A lot of these local folks, I see them trying to go for office. People who, mothers, people that work full time, people that do all these other things, but they're not always the ones that win. You know what I mean? Because potentially people like me aren't voting and the money, right? Because they don't have the recognition. Right. So what is John? Electoral college. Yeah, electoral college, what in the world? That frustrated the hell out of me, if I could.
Okay. May I?
Yes,
First of all,
please.
Your electoral college numbers are determined by filling out the census.
Yes.
Fill out your census. Your census is so important. And we actually partnered with the census, and that was going to be such an exciting thing at concerts this summer. We were actually going to share our table with the census and have them on
yes.
us because it is so important. If you don't like the electoral college, fill out your census because, again, misrepresentation. If we don't do it, then we don't have the numbers that represent our states. We don't get the financial support that your community needs. That is the underlying. If we don't fix that, then the rest of it doesn't matter.
Right. But at the same time, I've argued with my son forever and ever that why do we even have electoral college? He's like, well, if we didn't have electoral college, then places like LA would get all the vote. And I'm like, well, if that's where all the people is, and then who should have the vote? What kind of society do we have? Republic, democracy, oligarchy? What else? You know what I mean? What are we living in here? So that electoral college, I'm glad John said something about it because it has been a big source. And I understand the numbers, but I still think, if the whole reason is so this area won't have more votes than that area, then you're telling me that my vote maybe only count for a half, so that's part of the frustrating part for me with electoral college. But electoral college doesn't come into play with your local elections.
No.
Right,
exactly. And then when you vote in your local elections and influence who you would like to rise to the top, and you have filled out your census and people are participating in that, now your electoral college representatives are the people you have voted for, and there's enough of them because you're getting your proper representation. So you have to take part in the process. If you
Yes.
don't take part in the process at any level, then you're never going to get the result that you want. And then people are going to complain and question it. And
Yep. Get complacent after that, right?
right.
Just shut up after
So,
a while.
yeah, exactly. So the Electoral College, like that whole process as a whole, it is something I have struggled with personally when I take off my head count,
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah.
It is something that I have very, very much struggled with understanding. So I get it. I get where people are coming from with that. But again, if we're putting our numbers and putting our effort in locally, right, John, why can't we just continue, get involved, get in there and start talking to your people and, and ask those questions. It's worth an ask, let's talk about it.
It sure is. I mean, if it's important to us, then we need to do something about it. And I think really, Margery, that's your message. That's the main seed that you're planting, right? Is do something. What's your thing say? If you don't, you can't bitch. Mark won't hit the button on you.
Earn your right to bitch.
Yeah.
And Margery, I had a quick question for you because it's something that's come up in conversation with friends of mine and everything. And that's that I sometimes feel, and I know that you're doing this very important work with head count and everything over there in Colorado, but sometimes I feel that we're not getting enough attention about civics in our school system. Like I know that I've got friends that want to do stuff. I'm teaching civics in the school system because I think that that's part of the reason that we have such low voter turnout is because I remember growing up in the as a teenager in the 70s and in the 60s, there were some courses about civics. There were courses about that. And I didn't even think we had enough then. But now I think there's even less. So I think that that's part of the problem. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, because I've got some friends that are actually trying to build some civic programs that they want to create to bring to the school system, because they also argue that there's not enough civics in our education. And I would argue all the way from elementary level on up to even parts of some colleges and junior colleges and community colleges. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'll give you my opinion, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's so important, Mark. You're so right. And you should have your friends connect with me, because Headcount has actually put together an entire toolkit for high schools. Those students who participated and organized with March for Our Lives, we started an initiative with a lot of juniors and seniors have made their big project, engaging their classmates and having voter registration drives at schools. So have your friends reach out. Headcount has a toolkit for that. Mark, I think there's a lot deeper of a issue there than just the civics side of it. If you open up the education and what we're learning in the school systems as a whole, and in light of a lot of open eyes over the last few months, especially, I think that there would be a lot more to learn and a lot more civic engagement if there was an actual real understanding of the real history of the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
if we understood the history of the United States at a real representation of what actually happened and not what we are being told to understand, then again, also civics would have a whole different shape.
And I think, Mark, it's also a bigger picture on what school teaches us, right? Because I think that our public school system, like I remember my son going through it. What'd you learn to do today, honey? How to stand in line. Okay. What'd you learn how to do today, honey? Sit down and keep my hands to myself. Mm-hmm. What'd you learn how to do today, honey? Oh, not talk to the teacher. So Ankit is 100% on it with his comment, is that I feel like we're training the herd to be sheep. And I know I keep saying that over and over and over, but the only thing we can do that sheep can't, I feel like, is vote. No, just kidding, but not really. Because we're not training kids. We're telling them to fit in versus, follow their soul spark for the certain extent. Like, this is way crazy in this conversation, but for example, I love unicorns and rainbows, right? Who doesn't love unicorns and rainbows and sparklies? Come on, man. But as you grow up, you're taught, oh, that's for little kid. That's not, that's, let go of that. And then, think about this and that. And so we lose so much of, I want to say, of what makes us different or what makes us happy almost to an extent through this system, because we're almost told to be like everybody else. And then we wake up almost midlife like, wait a minute, I'm not like them. I'm not like them. I'm me. And then we go through a midlife crisis trying to undo all those layers of conditioning that we had. So I think Ankit's 100%, about training, whether it's future leaders, really just thinking. What is it? Einstein talks about helping somebody think. Don't tell them what to think. Just help them learn how to think, open your mind. And again, that's kind of, I see the parallel with head count. You're not telling us who to vote for. You're just saying vote. And then you're giving us some resources and suggesting that we get resources to educate ourselves as to who we think the best candidate to represent us are. Right.
And Margery, how many people has headcount registered so far? And do you think that we'll ever get to the point where, I know that there's some people that are pushing even for like things that would make voting almost mandatory, which then I don't know whether headcount would have a job. So like I said, because it would be mandatory and everything, but I was wondering how many folks have you registered, and can we find a way to get more people registered? Because I've always been astonished at how few people actually vote when we think about the importance of voting and the importance of, particularly as Tish was alluding to earlier, I think that sometimes we get too caught up in the celebrity aspect, and that's what I call the national offices, when we often know that it's the local offices, whether it's the soil commissioner or your mayor or other things that have a more direct impact on the day-to-day lives of most of us. So I was just wondering your thoughts on how we can get more people engaged, and how are y'all doing in terms of mobilizing numbers?
I'm really excited you asked that, Mark, because we just put that number out, I believe just yesterday. We count our voter registrations in election cycles. So since the 2018, since we've mobilized immediately the day after that election finished, we started regrouping for the next election cycle. And since then, we have registered over 200,000 voters.
Woohoo! Yes.
National Voter Registration Day is held annually in September. It was just this past Tuesday. It's typically on a Tuesday to align with Election Day. And on this National Voter Registration Day, we registered 25,000 voters. It's been on one day. It was awesome. It's been a very interesting shift from the in-person to the digital through the pandemic. Mark, it's been, at first we were so bummed because we had this huge goal of 200,000, I'm sorry. And we were like, how is this going to happen? We can't go to events. And then they had to regroup. And I'm a volunteer. I'm the regional coordinator here in Colorado, overseeing team leaders and volunteers throughout the state. But there's a front office in Manhattan who are all working from home right now. And they have worked endlessly to partner with people who can help us get the word out. This shirt was made by American Eagle. We have actually just today announced a partnership with Saks Fifth Avenue. If you walk into Saks Fifth Avenue, you're going to be asked to register to vote. We had a event at all the Tanger outlets nationwide. So we have QR codes that we've plastered everywhere, and it takes you to our digital portal where you can check your status. You can register if you're not up to date, and you can also pledge to talk to your friends and send the message out to your friends. So we have found an amazing engagement process digitally. Also, Mark, you said, would we maybe be eventually putting ourselves out of business? And I'm glad you said that, because I think it's one of the most amazing things I've ever, and insightful things I've ever heard someone say. We have team leader retreats for headcount after major election cycles. And I think it was the first one I went to in 2016. We were having that conversation. We were like, oh, we're going to have everyone registered to vote one day. And Andy, our executive director, said, well, I hope so. Isn't it the goal of every nonprofit to eventually put themselves out of business?
Yes, 100%.
And it just struck me. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, okay. Wow. Again, the chills, like, yeah, that's obvious. Every nonprofit would hope to eventually not have to be in business one day.
Yeah.
So, it was very insightful. Yes, there are countries that do require voting. Australia is one, for example. I know an Australian that was in school here that received his ballot, in the US. I've heard some really interesting stories about being tracked down across the country to make sure you get your ballot. It's a serious thing. And there's the argument of some people say, I don't want people voting who aren't doing the research, and there's some validity, and, just filling in your Scantron, just picking circles, is that doing any good? No, so again, it's all about getting involved. And if we can get a little bit more civic engagement, Mark, if we have a little bit better perspective of history, because a lot of people, there's a lot of, well, maybe I won't say that.
You can say it.
Well, there's a lot of questions I've seen people coming around saying, how could people have let slavery happen? How could people have let Hitler rise to power? How could people have at any point in history, how do people let this happen? Right. Well, by not being engaged.
Right. Well, either not being engaged, or sometimes I think that sometimes we allow people to influence our engagement. I know one of the things that Tish talks about all the time is not just being a voter, but also being an informed voter. And I'm thinking that that's what you're also talking about, Margery, as well. I know a number of folks that will, here in Durham, where I'm at, Durham, North Carolina, we have people that have various PACs, political action committees. They'll get that little sheet from the political action committee, and they'll vote straight whatever that political action committee told them to vote. And then if you ask them why they voted for that person, they can't explain it other than the political action committee told them to vote for that person. So,
right. And the average Joe, most people can't explain the primary process or understand what a closed primary and open primary is. People that just don't know that they have to change their address if they do move. People who perhaps have been arrested and imprisoned for a felony and think that maybe they can never vote again. And there's just not enough education, period, across the board about the process. And I love to say, cell phones, they're attached to us. We live in an age of convenience.
Yes.
Well, that's what Headcount has tried to do. We've tried to make it as convenient as possible to get the access to the information. And I better make sure I do mention this other huge partnership, Global Citizen. They just partnered with us, and Atlantic Records as well. Just massive partnerships, and we're so grateful for them because there was a time Headcount was absolutely pinching pennies to get voter registration forms even printed, and getting the stamps to mail it in, and so to be able to have the support of these big companies to make sure that the message of democracy is being spread is just amazing. And then to have folks like Tish to have me on to just talk about it. It's this is how we get the message out. This is how we remind people to be engaged, because we have to talk about this stuff. I think my mom and dad were raised under the guise, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion,
Mm-mm.
But if you don't talk about things, then it just doesn't work.
But part of it, I think back in the day when people would talk about it, it was, I'm going to go ahead and say it wasn't always with a lot of respect.
Right.
Like I think if we can talk about it and communicate it with respect, like Mark, if I don't agree with you, that's 100% fine. You're not I'm not worse because I don't agree, and you're not worse because you don't think like I do. That's, I think, part of people start to take it personally.
Right.
And like I keep bringing my son up, but anytime you talk politics, he's going to come in the conversation as far as I'm concerned, because he used to tell me, don't troll on the internet, because I couldn't help but, people post things and you want to post back. But I wasn't adding value. I was just adding my opinion, which is valuable, but I wasn't adding any objective facts of, I'm always looking whenever somebody's like, this person's great or this person's not great. I'm always like, why? Why is that, for that education point and to understand why we vote either way. But, this issue, the real core issue is bigger than just the United States. The real core issue is for people to become educated and involved, no matter where they are. If they, there's some countries that don't allow it, unfortunately, but wherever you are, there are ways to get involved. If you don't like something, jump in it and do something right.
And countries that don't allow it, I think that there are ways to stay active in everything. I know that I've got a friend that lives in, I believe it's Pakistan, and she is a dentist, and she's actually been on one of our other shows here on IBM.TV. But she's talked about the fact that, that there may be repressive rules against women in her particular country, but she is not letting that stopping her from being active and involved. I mean, she may be facing ridicule from her community and other things, but she also feels that it's important for her to put her voice out there. So I think that it's important for everybody in the globe to put their voice out there. So that's what I would argue, that can happen even globally and not just here in the United States and everything. I did have a question for Margery. Margery, I know that sometimes people will move just a matter of a short distance away, and a lot of times they'll feel like, I really don't need to change my polling site or change where I'm voting at because I don't mind going out of the way from where they used to live at. How active does the government actually check where you're moving? So like you said, if you live in an apartment complex and you move from one apartment to the other, but you still keep the same voting poll and everything, but you've moved addresses, is it that important to change? Or even if you moved across a block, but you still feel comfortable where the old voting was? So how important is it for you to actually change your registration if you've just moved slightly?
Well, lucky for us and Mother Nature, we don't have electoral lines painted all across the streets and the parks and things like that. City council, your congressional districts, all of those things can change literally one neighbor to the next. The line could be right down the middle of the street, the people who are the odd side versus the even side. So yes, it is incredibly important. The apartment complex number, but you should because, and it's important because you are affecting your representation, right? Yeah. So it's really important, and people don't get that. And it's going to come down to being incredibly important this year for the first time with all of the mail-in and absentee requests, because the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of people who are immunocompromised who cannot go to the polls this year. Right. And there's a lot of people who are finding out that they aren't registered in the right location, that some states will purge you from the voting records if you don't participate once or twice. Wow. You're gone. And if you show up to vote and you're not registered, some states have same day registration. Some states don't. And it's a state to state thing. It's definitely something which I think that, should maybe have a little bit more uniformity. Even the requirements on the information given when registering to vote is different state to state. Our clipboards that we use, because, I'm in Denver, Colorado. Red Rocks Amphitheater is one of the most famous venues in the world to visit. So when I'm registering voters at Red Rocks, I typically only get a couple of Colorado residents. It's the people from all other states. And so on my clipboard, I have a cheat sheet of what does South Carolina require for an ID? Does Alabama require that they state their race? Does Tennessee state require that they state their party? Because it's all different state to state. So that's also been a challenge with registering voters, is that every state has different requirements. But perhaps some more uniformity would make that a little bit easier and make participation a bit easier as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Definitely got to get more people out voting on a regular basis. I know that that's something folks are talking about all the time. If I remember correctly, wasn't head count also involved? I'm a fan of the sports, particularly NBA and NFL, but it seems to me that I remember head count being involved with like some of those sports that are going on now, or am I getting the wrong organization? So like I said, if I'm the wrong organization, you can clarify.
Gosh, it's possible. I know. So with National Voter Registration Day, we had our big national partnerships, but all of the team leaders across the country are all so self-motivated, Mark, and are absolutely incredible people and have set up partnerships with their local things. Tish and I talked about National Voter Registration Day. I partnered with a couple of local places, and on their social medias and to their email lists, they got some things out. And I do believe I saw that one of our Texas team leaders partnered with the Houston Rockets and did a big thing. And LeBron James, I know, has been very behind getting people involved.
Nice.
I would love to have him under our wing. That would be a really cool one. We'll get there.
Right.
But I do know, I have seen, Mark, that a lot of these unused venues and arenas are being turned into polling locations, which is absolutely amazing because I know that where I voted in North Carolina was a tiny little cramped church that was already uncomfortable enough to stand in line. Now with the virus and everything, and so to be able to walk into a massive Madison Square Garden and not have to worry about your polling place being cramped up next to other people is fantastic.
Right. Or
amazing.
Or having to wait for 3 hours because of safe social distancing.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you have your finger on the trigger with the pictures?
I do, and I was getting ready to pull some of them up right now because I actually had my finger on some of them. So they were from the Facebook that you sent. So I'm actually going to pull up some of those pictures right now, and we can see some of the great things that they've had going on. So definitely, I think that's one of the pictures there.
So we can let her tell us as you bring them up. Let's have her tell us what's going on there.
Oh, gotta love those good Facebook filters.
Right. It's great.
Yeah, so when we did March for Our Lives, I helped organize, and then I actually got to go to Manhattan and help run a group of 110 volunteers on the 28 block march through Manhattan.
Wow.
And we had those bright yellow t-shirts made, and whose bright idea it was to give me a megaphone, I don't know.
Somebody gave you a megaphone? How dare they? I think you're very good with megaphones.
But in New York City that day, we registered 778 people.
Woo!
Yeah, that was a fun stack of papers to count. That was a very great day. Well, this is a great photo. I love this photo in action. My buddy Whit Bell took that, who was my touring partner for Dead & Company. I believe this is in Atlanta in 2017, before I was actually on tour. And I may or may not have acted like I was at work that day, Tish, and drove down to Atlanta to make sure I got a bunch of voter registration done. But I did a lot of customer service calls on the 6-hour drive down.
I'm sure you did.
But that was a great example of interacting with fans of all ages. And that's Whit. That's my tour partner, Whit Bell. He's my buddy. Just a great guy. He's actually working for Headcount now. He's in charge, I believe, of this global citizen partnership, which is just a huge thing. but just salt of the earth. Headcount is just, I mean, one of the other things I'm so grateful for is that Headcount has literally introduced me to my best friends in my life. And I call that guy a brother now. It's amazing.
That's wonderful.
I think that's backstage in Boston, maybe, I want to say. I don't know.
And what is Dead and Company? I'm seeing a name and I'm going like, what is that?
So Mark, Dead and Company is that's the Grateful Dead. If you're familiar with the Grateful Dead, not all of the members of the Grateful Dead are alive anymore. And one of the members doesn't play with them anymore. So it's what's left of the Grateful Dead plus John Mayer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
Ooh, that looks like fun.
Lock-in. Man, I miss these days. These are the good things. This is participation row. Trying to look to see who's in that photo. I think this is like 2015 or 16. This is a rock star team of team leaders. Lock-in Music Festival is in Arrington, Virginia, just outside of Charlottesville. And it's a jam band festival, but that's where I think we had 17 nonprofits on participation row.
Wow.
And that's just the Headcount crew. That doesn't include the rest of the nonprofits. And, we man that booth. We have Ben and Jerry's right next to us. I forgot to mention them. They're an amazing sponsor. They even made us our own flavor called, Yep, Empowerment.
Mint. We need to look for that.
Yep. So Ben and Jerry's comes to festivals and they go on fish tour with us, and we give out scoops of ice cream to the hot sweltering fans.
Sounds like some amazing things that are going on over there and everything.
Fun. Oh, look there. There's royalty there.
So to my left, the screen's right. That's Whit. And then for those of you who don't know the guy with that handlebar mustache, that's Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead. He's the guitarist, the acoustic guitarist for the Grateful Dead and Dead and Company. And he's been on our executive board since day one, speaks for us. He has this vote pin on his guitar strap. And I mentioned earlier, Tish, the donors for that come to us and help Headcount keep going. And that night in particular, that was backstage in Detroit, Michigan in fall 2017. I'll never forget that. And we had introduced a donor to Bob. And afterwards, I was like, can we get a picture with him? Whit? And so Whit said, yeah, hey, Bob, could we get a picture for the Headcount archives? And Bob said, yeah, let's put her in the middle.
Yay!
Sounds great. Woo! Sounds like it was a lot of fun and everything. Definitely some great pictures right there and everything. So those were just amazing. Tish and Margery, you'll be glad to know you can tell Bob this as well. But I just found out that because I've been doing some scouring for some of our other shows. So on one of the shows we will have here on IBM.TV, we may have one of the founders of Woodstock appearing on this network to talk about his experience of creating that. So I've actually been talking to one of the founders, and hopefully he'll be appearing on one of our shows. So anytime, maybe we can get Bob on a future show as well. But I was just curious, and I'm sorry that I joined so late, but like I said, me and Zach were busy with everything. But what's the number one reason that when y'all are going out there, and I'm so glad that y'all have all these amount of people that have registered, but what's the number one reason that people give you when they don't want to register? So if you're trying to get them to register and they don't want to register, what's the number one reason, and what is your counter argument to them? Because I'm sure there's a variety of reasons that you hear for not wanting to vote.
Yeah, there are. Sometimes, Mark, it's honestly that just people are there for the music, and it's just not that what they're there to talk about, which is fine. That's totally fine. And those people go enjoy the show. Look us up later, give them their business card. It goes in the back pocket. Maybe they connect with us later. And that's totally fine. That's their prerogative. We're not there to force it on anybody. I think a lot of it is a big one is that people say my vote doesn't count. A lot of people don't think that their vote counts, and that's a sad thing. And that's when we get into that discussion of, well, why do you think that? And when was the last time you voted in an election? And, and then that's when we really started that vote local, having that discussion about voting local, because there are a lot of, disenchanted folks that just, have a hard time believing in the process. And, they engage with us and they say, thanks for that discussion. Thank you for that discussion. And then the other one, Mark, is the felon thing. There's a lot of that. And that's a state to state reinstatement issue. In some states like Vermont, you can vote while you're in prison. In some states, if you receive a felony, you will never vote again. In some states, you can vote if you're on probation. Some states, it's after you're done with probation. And so there's a really great opportunity to engage with people there, because I've registered more than a handful of people who have said, well, they'll say, I can't vote. Well, why? Do you mind me asking why? Oh, well, I'm a felon. People are typically actually more open than that about that than you would think. And then you say, oh, well, what state? And then we have a sheet, to be able to look at the sheet, and there's, oh, well, this state. Oh, well, are you done with your probation? Well, yeah. Well, cool. You actually can register.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's really fun. That's awesome. And it's a great, honest conversation to have with people, because, no one's perfect. And, the whole purpose of that system is rehabilitation and reentry into society to act as rest of us do. And part of that's voting.
Yeah, definitely got to get out there and vote. And a number of folks are, I know, trying to vote on a regular basis. And like I said, there's just so many things that we forget about just because we're thinking that we don't have those rights. And you're right, a lot of folks automatically assume things, and you have to actually go out there and check on the things and not just make assumptions. But I've heard a number of folks that do make assumptions. I've actually had a good friend of mine that's actually running around because he was a former inmate. So Mike Anderson has actually got a thing called Polished Souls, and that's part of what he does is he shows the people that have gone through the justice system that they can be engaged in, that they can do a number of things that they think that they can't do. So you're so right about that. I was actually just looking up a thing that a friend of mine sent me, and it was very profound, and I thought I was going to share with y'all because y'all are two very powerful women and everything. But a friend of mine that I sit on a board with, Lisa Long Jackson, she was putting down, and was after RBG had passed, the things that women couldn't do in 1970. And a lot of these things were things that had to do with rights and things of that nature. So she was talking about the fact that women could not own credit cards under their own name back in 1970. So we're only talking 50 years ago. Women could not lease property in their own names. Women could not attend military academies. Women could not serve on juries on all states. Women could not serve as a judge. So that was why that was put in context with RBG and everything. Women could not be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Women could not adopt a baby as a single person. And women were not acknowledged for running in the Boston Marathon. And of course, women could not get abortions throughout the country. So that's just some of the things. And some of those are things that have to do with voting and rights and things of that nature. So definitely it seems like that's very something that particularly the women in our lives need to think about when they're thinking about reasons that they should vote, because there are some rights that have been granted. And of course, there are some threats against some of those rights. And I didn't even list all of them, but those are just some of them that Long Jackson highlighted.
Absolutely. I want to get like a lace thing.
Yes.
She was an amazing woman. She did. And again, if you don't utilize those rights that she fought for and earned for us, then they'd go away.
So true. So what message would you give to folks that are, what are the next events you got coming out for voting? Like I said, you had the big one, but election is in less than a month and a half. So I know that next week will be like October 3rd or something like that, and then we'll be about a month and a day or two away from the election. So the elections are coming at us fast and furious. I know that first debate, I believe, is this Tuesday. So what kind of things would you tell folks to become engaged in the voting process, and what other events does Headcount have that you're involved in?
Well, if you haven't checked your status, do that. That's the very first thing. Check your registration status. Be absolutely sure. Do not get caught when it's too late. A lot of deadlines are approaching for states, so get that done now. Formulate your plan to vote. Are you going to vote in person? Where? Do you know where your polling place is? Show up early. Are you going to need to take time off work? Are you going to vote by mail? Do you need to request your absentee ballot? Are you going to drop off your ballot? Where do you do that? All of those things are all those resources, answers to all of those questions other than what your decision is, are all at headcount.org. Okay. You can state by state breakdown. You can check your own personal status. You can if you need to update, be taken to the right site to do so. Again, every state is different with their online registration portals. Some states make it easier than others, but it is what that is with where you live. So make sure, again, you're on it now, because if your state makes it a little bit more difficult and there's more steps, then you need to have time for that. Headcount is going to be doing a ton of events. Anywhere there are team leaders who are comfortable doing in-person events, which that's totally up to them as individuals. Then there are events with our partners. I saw someone doing a Ben & Jerry's scoop shop. I saw someone doing a Patagonia, a LuLaRoe, all of these things, because we don't have concerts right now. And those things that are typical venues, are typical events. So you can go to headcount.org and look for events. There's an events tab, and take a look to see if there's things local. But again, I mentioned earlier those texting campaigns that we're doing. Anybody who has engaged with us at different events along the way since 2004, we've been engaging with them and making sure. And we have a ton of texting events to do. It's so much fun. Mark, last night, we had 14 people in a Zoom room, and we texted 29,000 bands. Fish is my favorite band. And so I was in charge of that session. We played one of the concerts. We listened to that live. We sent out 29,000 text messages, and the responses rolled in. And we have it's a platform, and based off of what they say, we had about 15 choices of written responses. And it was the most we had when we did it for 2 hours, because then it was just too late East Coast time. We had a 23% response rate. It was through the roof. We hope for a 5% response rate.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
A 5% response rate can sway an election. We had a 23% response rate last night. And when I woke up this morning, there were 7,000 replies in that bank waiting for us to get back to continuing the conversation. So
yay!
We did that last week with Dead & Company. Actually, Bob Weir popped into the Zoom room with us, and those volunteers who were there who didn't know, I didn't know it was coming, but I've met him before, but it still is no less cool each time. Some of those fans were like, oh. So we're doing that with and we're doing that, I would imagine, until election night. You know, I would imagine that's going to continue. And then the digital campaigns, actually, we just announced yesterday a virtual festival. It's called Democracy Comes Alive. There's about 45 artists. I don't have the date memorized. It's going to be on a weekend coming up. All the proceeds for the virtual thing benefit Headcount. We'll have our link and all of that stuff up the whole time. It'll be amazing. And all these musicians, again, rallying behind the cause and making sure that their fans know that we exist and that we're available, and asking them to just be involved and to make their own decisions.
Sounds like some great things going on. What's the most unusual event that y'all have had? Because I'm sure y'all have had some unusual events. You mentioned a couple, but I was just wondering, Margery, what you think is the most unusual event that you've seen to get folks out to vote? Because I'm sure there have been some unusual ones.
So we're partnered with a bunch of really great organizations. We've done Comic-Con. We did a Pod Saves America tour. We DragCon is really fun. I just saw a campaign out of Atlanta. The Exotic Dancers in Atlanta have put out
that's funny,
an absolutely incredible video about voting, and at the end they have a verify your registration link, and they utilized HeadCount's verification link. So yeah, some very, very interesting ones.
It sounds like some great ones. By the way, I should let folks know that are watching on IBM.TV that are actually going on right now, and it'll be going on until about 2 this morning. We're actually doing a fundraiser for the folks that have been impacted by the fires in California. So one of our partners in crime, Jeff Eachin, is putting this together. So he's got some bands that are performing. So that's actually started at 2 our time. So it started a few minutes ago and will be running until 2 a.m. So it was 11 to 11 West Coast time, which is 2 to 2 on East Coast time. So that's actually going on right now. So after we're done watching Tish, we can all go in there and jump in and watch that and everything. Margery, I did have a quick question based on something that I saw. Then we'll leave it alone and let Tish talk some more. Then we can wrap up everything as well. But I was just thinking about the fact that you were talking about that gentleman from the Grateful Dead. And I was also watching a friend of mine that was doing an event with Steve Van Zandt, one of the members of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. And they were doing a thing in the schools and everything. I sometimes wonder when you have some of these legends, and yes, I'm a big fan of the legends as well, but you go and you're talking to the younger folks, if they are glad to have these folks engaged, but I'm sometimes wondering if they even know who they are. Because like I said, I saw him going into he was having this great conversation with the students about the importance of education. And in the back of my mind, I'm going like, that's a 8-year-old. Does the 8-year-old he is and everything? So like I said, I was wondering if y'all ever had that kind of experience when you're bringing in the folks from the Grateful Dead.
Totally. I think you may have joined us after we talked a little bit about the expansion of our musical base and the people that we were partnering with. But yes, it has definitely expanded beyond just the legends and the dads and grandpas of rock and roll at this point. And Ariana Grande and Jay-Z and Beyonce, and I mean, to be completely honest, musicians that I just have never even heard of and that I've been exposed to because of HeadCount, because of getting to go engage with those fans, you know, a young rapper named Grandson, and a DJ duo named Sophie Tucker, and just so many great local natives, and just these bands that are up and coming that do have that influence, a great fan base, a very passionate fan base. I mean, when it comes to music, the passion is there, and I think it's really great. Like Tish and I have been talking about just the whole idea of the nonpartisan aspect of it. You know, of course, we all have our own opinions. When I take my HeadCount mask off, of course, I have my opinions, but my opinions are mine and yours are yours. I just want you to be engaged. And that's what these musicians are doing and asking their fans to do. And yes, we have absolutely seen so much positive feedback and so much engagement across the board. It's since joining HeadCount in 2015, I think the 5 years I've been here, I've seen some of the most drastic change in the organization. And my heart just bursts with pride watching these people in the front office just kick butt, just absolutely. You know, Molly with her artist partnerships, and Tim with all these companies that are just begging us to partner with us, and just Andy and it's amazing. And then the Kellen, who runs all of the volunteers across the board, and then we have the regional coordinators. There's 10 of us, and then there's 100 team leaders that oversee the thousands of volunteers. It's just, I don't even remember where this question came from, because I'm just so excited.
You're doing a great job
about headcount. And if you want to get involved, please come get involved with us. We love volunteers. We are taking more volunteers with our text banking. I can't promise you Bob Weir is going to show up in your room.
You told me Bob was going to show up today, Margery. Where's he at?
You've already disappointed Tish. She was looking for Bob to be there, and now you're telling her that that's not going to happen. But definitely, folks can go to the website, which is headcount.org, and learn more about what's going on. I've actually been running the banner across and everything, because I know that I am a big fan of volunteering. I have not yet volunteered for Headcount, Margery, but as hearing your energy and your enthusiasm, I might add that to my list of things to do. As Tish can tell you, I'm so busy with so much stuff. She's trying to figure out where I'm going to find the time to put that in there.
So I was like, okay.
But I might see what I can do and everything. But definitely, I'm hearing your energy, and I have worked on a few other campaigns in terms of doing call center work and things of that nature. So I do know the importance of getting out there and getting the word out, because I've worked on a couple of things where I've done call center work, and I know that that's part of what y'all do in addition to the texting. And I've also done that knocking on the doors, which I know there was probably less of that because of what's going on with the pandemic, but I can also tell you it was an experience knocking on doors and also having those doors sometimes slammed on you if you were putting a particular partisan campaign on. So y'all have an advantage because y'all are nonpartisan, but I can tell you that if you're taking a partisan stand, there were some folks that didn't necessarily like that candidate, and they would let you know in no uncertain words. So I'm actually liking y'all's view more than nonpartisan, and I'm thinking there's less door slamming. There might be some door slamming, but less.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, the fact, so Margery, let's bring it on home. We talked about 3 steps, right? We talked about 1, register.
Yes.
2, educate yourself. And 3, vote. Right?
Simple.
Becoming involved. You know, I was looking at the definitions of democracy versus the definitions of a republic, right? To try to figure out what are we, even though I think sometimes I feel like we're more like an oligarchy, or being controlled once again by large corporations versus by representatives of the people. Right. But there were 4 steps to democracy, or 4 main principles of democracy. And that was a free and fair election. Mm-hmm. That was citizen participation. That was protecting rights, and equal role of the law. So in the very basic definition of democracy is citizen participation, which is what we're talking about. And when we talk about, you said 4% of a certain age group voted last time that could have voted. I mean, that we're failing our own democracy. Our government screwed up. Well, let's look in the mirror, shall we?
Yep. We got us here. We got us here.
We did. Right. And we can do something about it, though. That's the point. It's not too late. We can get involved. We can register. We can educate. And then we can hopefully help educate those around us, but without any of that negativity of, if you disagree, you're bad. Anybody that agrees is good.
We can also run for office.
Yes.
There's that.
We can also run for office.
Well, I think there's some people that don't like her, but the lady from New York, what's her name? Cortez?
Alexandria Ortega-Cortez.
She was a bartender a year and a half ago.
Yes.
Yep.
And now she's saying things that every woman, yes.
Yep.
So it's possible.
We have to take it into our own hands to represent ourselves and make sure that the representation is appropriate, or the easier route is to buy it.
and not just electoral offices as well, but there are a number of, like I said before, local offices that are very important, whether that's city council, whether that's county commissioners, whether that's aldermen in certain states and everything
Very
of
much
that
so.
nature, whether that's the different offices like soil commission, I'm just using that as an example, or sanitation commissioners, or different other kinds of offices. And of course, as Margery was saying, there are a number of city elected commissions and things of that nature that you can also get involved with. I know that here in Durham, I am a member of the Carolina Theater Board, but there are 3 people on the board that are city appointed, and that's city folks that are have an interest in that organization and interest in the arts, and we are appointed by the city. So I have to go before the city in order to get appointed, and I'm in the middle of my 4th year on that commission. So there are different organizations and different ways that you can get involved. I know that a lot of cities around the country have parks commissions that are sometimes appointed as well, and some of those are citizen appointees. So definitely, as Margery was saying, we can definitely become engaged in a number of ways. So I was just giving you a few examples of ways that I know about, but there are so many around the globe, and I'm sure that maybe even Margery is finding some over there in Colorado that she's going to become engaged in after she's done working with headcount. Because right now she's keeping busy with headcount. And I know, by the way, Tish, I've had a couple of friends that live in Colorado. I've heard that it's the greatest area in the world. I've yet to visit there, but I've heard that it's a very beautiful part of the country. So it's on my list of places to go visit: Colorado, California, a number of other places, because I've heard great things about the state that you are currently calling home, Margery.
Yeah, me and some friends got stranded in Colorado. Damn. Didn't get any skiing in, but we enjoyed ourselves quite a bit. It is beautiful, and I think the people there were really nice.
That
And
was
by the way, Bill Tresbon, who does our show American Politics, he's popped in and he does a number of other shows here on IBM.TV. He's actually in DC, but he was letting folks know that you can't buy leadership. So definitely that's one of the things he's saying, is that we have to actually have true leaders, because you can't actually buy leadership.
Well, that's along the lines of what Ankit was saying, is that we're not teaching anything. We're not teaching our kids really how to be leaders. Sometimes I wonder, can you teach somebody how to be a leader or not? But you definitely can teach a lot of skills. You definitely can teach a lot of, or infuse a lot of philosophies, a lot of thoughts, a lot of things that can help somebody be a better leader. The thing I think we need to stop doing is creating sheep.
right.
I know that 100%. Now, whether everybody's going to become a leader, that's a different story. I think there are some people that are, I think we're all born to a purpose, and I think we all have natural roles that we're born to fulfill.
Right.
So whether you're a leader or an educated constituent, that's another case too. But I definitely think with our educational system and in our system in general, there's too many, 98%, 99% sit down and be quiet. And while I handle this, I'll quote somebody in my life. Even there was something that was important to me, and the person kept saying, "I'll handle it. Let me handle it. Let me handle it." And you know what happened? Nothing. So, which all I say that for is, if you feel strong, stand up, do your part, participate, just like you've been saying the whole time, Margery. Participate. And to use, the beep word is, you can't bitch unless you do something about it, right? And even then, bitching's not really going to help, but
Definitely, I know we're going to have another amazing guest next week, Tish, so I want to find out who that is. But before we leave everybody, Margery, what words of encouragement would you give to folks, both in terms of getting out and voting and all of that? But I'd love to hear your words of encouragement. And I've got a very quick statement that I think everybody will be able to relate to, and it actually comes from the world of music, because I think that that's what we've been talking about the whole time. But what words of encouragement would you give for folks?
Well, just thank you for having me on to talk about it to your audience. I'm super excited and grateful for that. But just, I can't say it enough. Just get out there and vote. Don't skip this. Don't wake up on November 4th wishing you had done something more. If you can do anything, again, go to Headcount's Facebook and just share the posts that they're doing. There's something that you can do. There's something. Just do it.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Tish in a minute so we can find out who the guest is next week. But along the lines of what Margery has been saying, there is a famous line from a reggae song, and I think that that's what y'all have been talking about this whole time. It's called "Get Up, Stand Up for Your
Yes.
Rights." So definitely that seems to be
Yes.
what we are asking folks to do: is get up, stand up for your rights. So on that note, Tish, what do we have next week, and what kind of conversation can we expect on next week?
We have a survival guide to being human in 2020 next week. Chrissy Key Rollins is going to come on, and we're going to talk about a whole variety of things that she, basically the topic, once again, is going to center around educating yourself about these things that are going on and what can people do about some of these things that are going on, all the way from large pharma, Monsanto. I mean, all of these different concepts that we're bombarded with, things that are happening underneath the scenes that we have no idea. Once again, this whole sheep thing, should the name of my show be changed to "What Do the Sheep Do Now?" Or "Can You Hear Me Now?" I don't know. But how to stop being a sheep? I don't know. But anyway, that's my theme right now, I guess. But
No, we like what you're doing. You're planting a lot of seeds of knowledge, and we like the name. So I think we'll keep it plant a seed. That's okay with you. Because you're planting a
but
lot of
don't be a sheep. Step out of the herd. So it'll be really interesting as well. So Margery, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. It's so great to see you again, Tish. It's so great to reconnect. And thank you for allowing me to talk about headcount. Talking about music and headcount are like my favorite things in the whole wide world. And it's almost 1 o'clock here on Saturday in Colorado. I have my whole day ahead of me. Now I'm
fabulous. Woo! Well, I knew when I met you, you had that spark, and you were just, even though we were in a certain situation that, I don't think was that healthy for either one of us, you still, as soon as you started talking about, I mean, just you're a person in itself, but then once you started talking about head count, man, it was like, you like lit up and became alive, and then you went, it's just amazing. So I'm so grateful to you for what you're actually doing with headcount, and also being an example, because I know you shine your light for a whole lot of people, Margery, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Y'all are two amazing ladies. There's no doubt about that. And speaking of amazing ladies, we're going to bring up a young amazing lady. That's his daughter. So we'll see what she's got to say about the washing the hands and the other things that we should be doing. And then we'll get this airplane on out of here. But another great show, Tish. And I definitely am always glad to have these great conversations. Margery, it was a pleasure to meet you. Hopefully I'll get a chance to meet you in person at some time or another. But it was definitely a pleasure to get to know you through this platform. But right now we're getting ready to bring up Ankit's daughter so she can talk to us about some of the healthy things we should be doing during this pandemic.
Coronavirus से कैसे बचेंगे? हैंड होकर और ऐसे अपने खांसी जब आएगी तो ऐसे करेंगे अच्छू अच्छू और कोरोना वायरस को धन्यवाद हमारा म्यूजिक सुनने का.
She's so cute. I feel like we should have a translation, though. I think we kind of know what she's saying, but I'm always like, what did she just say there?
Yeah, we're going to talk about a translation, but right now let's get this plane on out of here.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Margery.
Bye.